Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about my favorite baits for November bass fishing. I know this one's a little bit later than my usual ones. With me being out for a little bit, I did not even realize that November was coming up, so I'm just filming this video now. But we're going to go through the baits that would work for November bass fishing, and my October baits will also work for November bass fishing as well, so that one will be at the end of today's video. Those are going to be like all the baits that I throw right now throughout the entire month and catch a ton of fish on them. So my number one right here that we're going to jump into is actually going to be a jerkbait. I absolutely love throwing a jerkbait throughout the month of November. It's pretty much one of the few baits that I throw from that like mid 50-degree water temperature all the way down until it like freezes. I've caught tons of bass in ponds right before they freeze throwing a shallow diving jerkbait like this guy right here, but I also throw the deep diving jerkbait on some bigger lakes and reservoirs, especially if you have ones that have a fall drawdown. So lakes that are very steep, highland reservoirs as they call them, they'll have a big fall drawdown. What'll happen is when that lake gets drawn down, those fish will pull to very steep banks because as that water temperature or the water level is fluctuating, they can just go out 100 feet and they'll be in the same depth of water. Instead of having to swim hundreds of feet or even a half mile or whatever to get to new water that's them that they can live in, they can just drop down. And in those deeper areas, usually that water is really clear. They can suspend, and that is where the jerkbait comes into play, especially the deeper diving one. Those places are going to be a little bit deeper. You're going to be fishing this jerkbait over 20, 30 foot of water, and they'll still be able to come up and get that. But like I said, ponds that have grass that die off, just places where those fish get a little bit finicky right before the water freezes. I really like a shallow diving jerkbait as well. They're awesome. I catch a ton of fish on either type of jerkbait throughout that colder months, and the reason being is you can perfectly imitate dying bait fish. A lot of times what'll happen is when that water gets really cold, especially shad, that's like the number one species that it happens to, but it'll happen to bluegills and other bait fish that aren't going to survive through the winter. They'll get shocked and they'll kind of just like float around and shimmy down on the bottom there. If you've ever seen it before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They kind of just shimmy around. They might twitch a little bit as they're dying, and that is exactly what a jerkbait imitates. It's an easy meal for a fish. They're looking to feed up for fall, and most importantly, you can exaggerate your length of pause depending on how cold the water gets. So usually when that water's in the 50s, I'm talking like 1 to 3 second pause. I'm really fishing that bait a little bit quicker, covering some water. As it drops down into the 40s, high 40s, you're looking at 5 or 10 seconds. And then if you get down into the low 40s, you're looking at 15 to 30 seconds in between pauses. You're gonna have to really know where these fish are at. They'll get more concentrated because the water's cold, but you're gonna have to know where those fish are at. You're not gonna cover as much water with this bait. You're gonna sit it in front of their face longer and really make it look like one of those dying bait fish that are struggling along, and they'll come up and grab this bait. So color-wise, I don't get too fancy with it. If you have really clear water, I'm gonna go with a ghost color. Anything you can see through, this is just like a ghost shad pattern. And then if the water's dirty, I'm gonna go with any type of pearl. These are pretty simple pearl versions. This is just straight white. I'll pick that pearl or white version whenever that water is a little bit dirtier, those fish can't see as well. And then a metallic would work on sunny days if you have one. Usually I just go ghost or pearl. That's pretty much all I stick with there. And then if you have smallmouth or spotted bass, they love bright colors. That's when this guy comes into play right here. This is called Wabi Sabi from Sixth Sense. It has the chartreuse belly and it's ghost on the sides with a little bit of hologram in the side there. Perfect for when you have those fish that really like bright colors. This is like my favorite smallmouth bass color ever. I will almost always go to this if I know I'm fishing for smallmouth bass. I'll just go straight to this jerkbait here. And then for the actual bait itself, there's two that I have right here for keeping it super simple. This is the Provoke 106X. It's the shallow diving, and then this is the DD right here. Pretty much covers 2 to 4, 5 foot of water with this guy. That's how deep the bait will get. I'll fish this one in anything from like 6 to 10 foot of water. And then if I'm fishing deeper than 10 foot of water, anything like 12 and beyond, I'll push the boundaries with this one a little bit. 12 and beyond, I'm gonna go with this guy right here, the deep diving. This one's gonna get down to about like 4, 6, maybe even 8 foot deep on a long cast. So that one will cover down a little bit deeper there. You can cover pretty much all of the water column with these two baits right here. My next bait, gonna be a little bit quicker choice here. It's one of my favorites for November all time. I absolutely love throwing this bait, and if you've seen my October baits video, it's actually in that one as well. So I'm not cheating, trying to pick a bait and just get one on there. I seriously love this bait for the month of November, October. I'll even throw it in December. It is that good that I've put it on this list twice. So if you are not throwing a finesse swim bait, if you have been watching my channel, you know exactly what this thing is. If you are not throwing a finesse swim bait in the fall, you are missing out, especially if you fish for smallmouth, especially if you fish for spotted bass. But I have caught largemouth on this bait as well. It absolutely crushes it all fall long. It is great. You can fish this thing fast if you need to when that water's warmer, but I've caught them all the way down 40-degree water temperature on this guy right here, like literally right before it freezes. On this bait, I have caught them no problem. You can fish this thing so slow that you can get bit no matter how cold the water gets, and that's why it's on the list again. When it comes to bait selection, this time of year, November, this is when I'm going to narrow it down a lot. So if you remember in October, I talked about fishing Kitex, you could fish the whale, you could fish these divine swim baits. When it comes to November, that water temp gets 50 degrees, even lower than that. This is the only one I'm going to throw, and it's going to be the Divine Swim Bait here. This is the 3.2 version. It's my #1 choice. If you have some bigger bait fish or some bigger fish, the 3.8 will get it done as well. But if I had one bait for this time of year, it'd be this guy right here in a 3.2. I have it in Pro Blue, and I have it in Ghost Ice Minnow, but any white color will work. If you have some cleaner water, I'm going to go with this Pro Blue. It catches them all the time. Like, this is like my favorite color ever. I've been smashing them the past couple weekends on this bait right here. This is actually my last pack. I don't really have any more left. It's the most natural color. It looks amazing. It looks just like a shad. It could look like other bait fish. I was catching smallmouth that were throwing up baby white bass, baby walleye, so it imitates that perfectly. And then if the water's a little bit dirtier, you can go to the white color as well. It'll stand out a little bit better. But if you have some cleaner water, I really like that Pro Blue color. And then, you know, I pour my own jig heads here. So this is the Gamakatsu ball head that I pour myself. They do make this jig head if you want to buy it. It's just cheaper to do it yourself. And I lose a ton of them because I fish it all the time. But this has a 2/0 hook in it, and I fish a 1/4 ounce size pretty much 99% of the time. Anything from 5 to 15, maybe even 20 foot of water, you can get away with that 1/4 ounce size. You just have to adjust for it on your retrieve. The deeper you fish this thing, I've fished it down to 20 foot, you literally have to crawl it like you're fishing a Ned rig. It's almost like just pulling your rod, because the faster you reel it, you might not feel like you're reeling it too fast, but the quicker you reel this bait, it will start to lift up off the bottom because of the angle of your line. So you have to reel it really slow. The bait will do all the work. This tail has such soft plastic in it that it's going to kick on the very slowest retrieve, and that is why this bait is amazing. But the quicker you reel, you might not feel like you're doing it too quickly, but that lift is going to cause you to get less bites. As the water gets colder, this thing has to be pinned on the bottom for you to get bites. Bounce it over every rock, you feel everything down there, and you will be catching a ton of fish on this guy right here, and that's why it made an appearance in 2 videos in a row. And my last pick for November bass fishing, this is one that'll work here in Pennsylvania. I have caught fish throughout the month of November. It's not something that plays as much. I also don't largemouth fish very often. In the month of November, I'm more focused on smallmouth, but the further south you go, this is one of my key baits for this time of year. And it's going to be a crankbait, but it's not going to be any crankbait. There are 2 that come to mind. They're very specific, and these are the ones that I like to use for this time of year. So if you're fishing for shallow largemouth, they're hanging around laydowns, they're up there where they can feed on shad, bluegills, even crawfish. The color choice will depend on what the forage is, but if you're fishing shallow for largemouth, around laydowns, riprap, rocky banks, stuff like that, I'm going to choose a flat-sided crankbait. It's a perfect one for this time of year as that water gets colder. You can still cover water. They're still looking to feed, especially if that water is 55 to 45 degrees. They will absolutely destroy this bait in that water temperature still. There are 2 that come to mind that I really like to fish. One of my favorites right here is going to be the 6th Sense Crush Flat 75X. This bait is awesome because it has very flat sides and it gives it that very tight wiggle, which is what the bait fish are going to be doing this time of year, so it mimics them excellent. You'll get a ton of bites on this thing. It comes in a bunch of colors. If you're looking to get a little bit upgraded version of this bait, they just came out with the flat-sided Finesse F4. I haven't even got my hands on them yet, but it looks like an awesome bait. The upgraded version of that is that it's going to have a circuit board lip, which I absolutely love on my flat-sided crankbaits, and it has a weight transfer system. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds of a balsa wood crankbait. I like balsa wood on my flat sides because it has a more natural action. And it just works really, really well. And that circuit board also helps drive that action. And then the only problem with a flat-sided crankbait that's made out of balsa wood is it doesn't really cast very well because it doesn't have the weight transfer system. So you get the weight transfer system in the new one, kind of the best of both worlds. And then if you love balsa crankbaits like I do, especially when that water's cold, this is my other favorite one right here, the Rapala OG Slim. I've caught a ton of bass on this bait right here. Again, it has that circuit board lip, perfect for that cold fall water, and then it has the flat sides as well. This does not have a weight transfer system in it, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to cast, but it still casts very well because of the size of this bait. But these two right here, the flat-sided baits, these are my favorite. They catch a bunch of fish, and it's just an awesome bait to fish throughout the month of November. Color-wise, I'm going to go with either a crawfish pattern if I know they're feeding on crawfish, or if the water's dirty, I can go with a chartreuse, or most importantly, the number one color I'm going to go with is a shad pattern this time of year. It's one of my favorites and I catch a ton of fish on it. The other crankbait option that I really like to fish this time of year is going to be a wigglewort style crankbait. If this is specific if you have smallmouth bass or spotted bass in your lake, I won't use that flat-sided crankbait. I will go to these ones instead, solely because the action on this bait just drives those fish crazy. It works so much better on those species of bass. I don't know why it is. It'll still work in that 55 to 45 degree water temperature on those species. I don't know if they just like the cold water better. They react better to this action. These get a little bit deeper. I can't tell you why it works, but if you have those species of bass, I will pick these ones over the other ones. 9 times out of 10 it will be in a crawfish color as well, as you can tell from these ones right here. Everything from a fluorescent red if you have some really dirty water to these more natural colors. You can get them very, very brown crawfish color looking. If you have some clear water, I'll still fish a crawfish color. It'll just be one of these guys. So 99% of the time I'm going to go with the crawfish color. And then there's 3 options on the actual bait choice here. They all do the same thing. They're just from different brands. It's going to be the 6th Sense Curve 55, the actual wigglewort. If you can find the OGs, awesome. They're a ton of money. They're very hard to find, but they work great. These ones are the Storm Wiggleworts. They still work good, and they're pretty cheap in stores now. You just have to change the treble hooks out on them. And then another great one is the Spro Rock Crawler. I've caught a ton of fish on this bait as well. Any of those style of baits is what you're looking for. They'll have a very fat, bulbous body and a very skinny tail, and that skinny tail is what's going to give it that wiggle. It's going to hunt down on the bottom. It's going to be all erratic. It's something that you wouldn't expect to work in cold water, but it works excellent. Just drives those 2 species of fish wild, and you'll catch a ton of fish doing it on those rocky banks and rocky points. They'll be feeding up for fall and will absolutely crush this crankbait. If you want to get any of the 6th Sense baits, you can help out the channel a ton. If you use the code Quince, you'll save 10% on your order. They make excellent baits. I've caught a ton of fish on these guys this year. I've been playing around with all of them, testing them all. The Provoke, caught a bunch of fish this spring on that one there. And then I've been catching some fish on this Curve right now, fishing for some smallmouth bass. So hope you guys enjoyed today's video talking about my favorite baits for November bass fishing. If you want to check out the other one for October, go ahead and check this one out right here. It will teach you the other couple baits that I really like for this time of year as well. They'll still work into November. They're excellent baits this time of year, and they're like my go-tos. I'll pretty much throw those 3 and these 3, and that's about it. All pretty much until the water freezes up here in the Northeast. And make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any more of my fishing videos coming up.